You're listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place.
Hey y'all, Michael here. Welcome to Spooky Season for 2023. Before this episode gets started, I wanted to jump in and remind you we'll be at Arcane in Durham, North Carolina on Thursday, September 28th at 8 p.m. We'll record a live episode, do a Q&A, hand out swag, and hang out with folks. We hope to see you there. Also, Arcane Carolinas Volume 1 is out now, collecting Charlie's research, notes, and reflections from a bunch of stories we've covered over time. There's a link in the show notes to this episode, so check it out. And now, on with the show.
All right. Michael, how are you today?
I'm doing reasonably well. I went to the gym. I went for a run. Got myself motivated despite not really feeling it.
That's pretty good.
How are you?
I'm okay. I'm excited to be doing this.
Casual chit chat with Charlie and Michael.
I'm your co-host, Charlie Mushaw.
I'm your other co-host, multi-award winning novelist, Michael G. Williams.
Full disclosure, this is actually how episodes start. We just kind of jump on and go, oh, hey, how you been?
Yeah, generally speaking. I was just editing an episode for the spooky season, and the first 3 minutes of it is us just like chit-chatting with people in a conference room. And I was like, this is actually really fun for me because I remember like the pleasure of being there, but I don't know if it's great radio, so I cut that part.
That's fair. But yeah, so we haven't done this in a while. You've been busy editing for spooky season. I've been busy wrapping up the book, which I just got proofs of today.
Nice.
That's awesome. Talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
There's an Arcane Carolinas book available now. You can go to arcanecarolinas.com, and we took down the merch store because it was never stocked.
As you pointed out early on, we don't want to be a t-shirt shop.
Right. It just became kind of a hassle for a non-sponsored two-person podcast where we both have full-time jobs to me. Yeah. So now if you go to the website and you click on merch, it'll just take you to our Amazon page where you can buy the Arcane Carolinas book. You can get it in ebook format or in illustrious, soft feel matte cover. Silky.
Yeah, no, matte cover is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. So, very modern. It's a very modern feel for very old stories.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The glossy
juxtaposition
cover
of old and new.
I mean, I have a lot of opinions about books, as one might expect. And I think the glossy covers are fine for certain kinds of covers and certain kinds of books. But I think matte covers are really where it's at.
Yeah, it's the vibe of today.
Yeah.
Big matte cover. That's their slogan. It's the vibe of today.
Deep cut book opinions. They tend to do less curling and they feel better in the hand.
There you go. It's important as you hold books with your hands most of the time. There's an exception for every rule, but Bigfoot might hold it with his feet.
Well, he might. You never know. Novelty.
Right.
Novelty reading.
Look at my enormous digits and what they can do on my feet. Wow. This is not great. Okay. So at this point, we're at the spooky season. Thank you for listening. Check out the book.
Oh, there'll be a link in the show notes.
Yeah, we'd really appreciate it. And full disclosure, the topic that we're about to talk about is not new. Normally, it's a surprise to one person. We've actually talked about this one before.
Very specific circumstance, though.
Yeah, and it's something that people should check out. So in October, Beaufort County Television from Beaufort County, South Carolina, will be running a series that you can also get on demand on their website that will feature us and others telling stories. It
may include Tally Johnson. We're not sure who all else.
Yeah, we don't really know who's on it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's going to be called Sea Island Spirits.
Yeah, and people can watch it online, but they'll have it available on demand for free on their website.
They also have a Roku channel, apparently.
Really? That feels very modern. That's the matte cover of streaming.
Yeah, that's what the producer told me while we were setting up.
Ooh, so modern today. We are with it.
As soon as it's possible for people to watch it in some form, then there will be links and show notes and things like that.
Yeah, and we'll post it on social media.
Oh, yeah.
But I give that as a full disclosure that Michael has heard me share this story before, but it was a really fun one. If we're being honest with ourselves, not everybody's going to watch the show. So let's put it in the audio feed too.
Plus, it's a really fun story. It's one that I think people deserve to hear.
And you're actually on a big kick with ghost lights right now.
I am. I'm reading a book called, I'm not going to remember the title exactly. So I'm going to say it's a book about ghost light phenomena in North Carolina specifically, because apparently North Carolina has 1/3 of all ghost light phenomena in the United States. And the author covered 13,000 miles traveling to different locations in North Carolina over the course of years to research ghost light phenomena, in part because he was a professional geographer. He was an academic geographer, and he was interested in it as research, but also partly because he just found ghost lights fascinating. So it's a lot of fun. I posted the title page of that on Facebook a few weeks ago, and I'll post a link to the book in the show notes for this episode.
And relating to your torrid affair with ghost lights, so we like stickers here at Arcane Carolinas, and you came to me with an idea and said, I have this cool idea. What was that idea, Michael?
A cool idea was a series of stickers that are specific to ghost lights that we have discussed on the show, including the one we're about to discuss. And so we'll have those to give away at events or to send to people in the mail if they ask for it, that kind of stuff, as long as they last anyway.
So wrap your heads around that, folks. It's not all Charlie Doodles. There's Michael Doodles now, too.
I'll make the cover image for this episode be the sticker for this light.
Which is great. I love it. And today's episode is the Land's End Light out of Beaufort County, South Carolina.
Which I'd never heard of until this got mentioned to us.
And what's interesting is when you start looking into Beaufort County legends, it's a big one. To draw an equivalency, you know how the Brown Mountain Lights are a big one in North Carolina?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're the ghost light in North Carolina.
Right. This is a big one down there.
Okay.
And they are located on St. Helena Island, a roughly 64 square mile island with a really interesting history, several cool landmarks, and a lot of legends actually in this concentrated space, including the Land's End Light.
That's pretty sizable for an island. Is it heavily populated or is it mostly depopulated?
Heavily populated feels pretty relative. I don't want to prescribe a census declaration to it because someone will email in.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's all good. Keep going.
Okay. Let's put it that way. It is not depopulated.
There is a population present.
There has consistently been a population present. And we'll get into that when we get into the history behind the legend and what the island has been over time.
In part, I asked that because in the course of our research to prepare to shoot those segments for Beaufort County TV, I learned a lot about Beaufort County sea islands, including that there are some that have no population. So,
yeah, this is not Monkey Island. This is not. Oh, what's that other one that we talked about with the lady, the blue lady?
Yeah, that was not that island, but Fripp Island has no people on it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So anyway, along a tree-lined, Spanish moss-shaded 2-lane road on St. Helena Island. This is my narration of the legend.
Okay.
If you head towards Fort Fremont, there's an old fort. On Land's End Road, there's a stretch where people have reported a mysterious glowing orb for several generations now.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't remember that it was for many generations.
It is. And we'll get into the potential explanations of why. If you find yourself there after dark, it's said that with some regularity, it's not like an every night thing, but there is like regularity to it. You can catch a glimpse of the Land's End Light. Accounts consistently state that it begins in the distance and appears like a single headlight coming down the road towards you.
Oh.
As it gets closer, it becomes evident that it's just an orb of light and not nearly as bright as a headlight. So you know how a light in the distance, you might be like, oh, whatever. As it comes closer, you realize it's not that bright, but it physically manifesting as a ball of light.
And it's low enough to the ground that people might think it was a headlight, but it's not.
Right. And this is where it gets really crazy. So accounts of what the light does vary. So everything is consistent in that it starts in the distance and comes towards you and is not like blindingly bright once it gets up on you. Some accounts say that it will leave you charged with static electricity with your hair standing on end.
Oh, like it hits you?
Yeah, like it'll go through you.
I really want to go see this. I want to experience that.
Others have reported the light passing through their vehicle, illuminating the interior of the car and affecting the electronics in the car.
Okay, that's straight out of UFO lore.
And there's no singular cause that's accepted for what the light might be.
Okay.
So on the paranormal side, some folks will say that it is the spirit of enslaved people that were hung along the road as punishment for having tried to run away.
Oof.
There are accounts that say, oh, it's a Confederate ghost, which to me feels like a lot like Blackbeard.
Yeah, feels like a very generic explanation.
Right. One interesting account states that it's specifically the ghost of a man named Quigley.
Quigley.
As in, if it was Piggly Wiggly owned by Quigley.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I really wish I had thought of that during the TV filming. For those of you that haven't had the delight of shopping in a Piggly Wiggly is a chain of grocery stores.
Piggly Wigglies are legitimately great.
So the circumstances of that occurrence of the ones tied to Quigley even vary. And then there's like other variations with varying degrees of horror involving like terrible vehicle crashes and overturned buses and stuff like that.
Right. Blackbeard ran into a school bus full of children and etc.
Right. But those are pretty easily knocked off just by searching like basic records. There's less spiritual oriented theories or occult oriented theories, supernatural oriented theories like swamp gas, or that is the recurring site for the exceptionally rare ball lightning.
Okay. I mean, ball lightning happens. We know that.
But it's so rare. I don't like that explanation. We'll get into that. Like, it's so rare. Why would it keep occurring in the same place over and over and over?
I don't know. Atmospheric conditions. Beats me.
It's a microclimate.
Yeah.
I feel like we lean on that a lot. It's a microclimate. Then there's conventional explanations that are super, super mundane, like it's headlights shining through the trees.
Yeah, except that if it's on a tree-lined road through a swamp, how many other cars are there for there to be headlights shining around from?
So there's all these different explanations. What is agreed on is that the light is real, but when and what causes it is what's up for debate. That's why I draw a comparison to the Brown Mountain lights. Like people are like, yeah, no, it's real. It happens. It's there. We don't know what it is, but it's there. And what stands out to me is the similarity between this and other phenomena involving balls of light, specifically moving near the ground level, because we see that repeated not just in regional folklore, but like globally.
Really?
Yeah, like around the world. So the Farmer's Almanac, great source of knowledge, has a pretty fun list of names associated with the phenomena of like ground level lights. This is a few of them: ghost lights, corpse candles, will-o-wisp, fairy lights, spook lights, ghost orbs, hinky punk, which I had to look up, and that's English in origin.
Okay, sure.
Something, yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Pucks.
Oh, okay, like tricksters.
Yeah, and generally speaking, like the tales of these types of lights invoke some sense of malevolence or at least mischief, luring unsuspecting mortals from their path and occasionally to certain doom.
Yes. I do like the certain doom stories, if I'm being really honest.
You're all doomed. So St. Helena Island, let's talk about a little bit about the history of the area and see if we can tie that to possible explanations. Are you ready for history? I don't know why I'm asking you that. You're always ready for it.
Yeah, I was born ready for history.
You're like, supersize it, please. So St. Helena Island was inhabited by a number of various indigenous tribes to varying degrees, but was never occupied by a singular tribe or people prior to European arrival.
Okay.
So it was like lots of different people came and went. Records from the French, Spanish, and English settlers from between 1562 and 1751 recorded the names of more than 24 groups or tribes of indigenous people within the region.
Wow. And A, I would bet that those records are incomplete. And B, I would also bet that there might be some duplication there of one person transliterating a name in a different way from another.
Sure.
But point being, there were many people represented in this place.
Yeah, it was diverse and busy. I guess, is a good way to put it.
Well, in a lot of these coastal places, and this is true up and down the coast of South Carolina and in North Carolina on the Outer Banks and on the Sound side, and in South Carolina on the Sea Islands and on the coast proper, there were a lot of Native American peoples who would come to the coast to harvest seafood, things like that. Part of their societal model involved seasonally being on the coast and then leaving it.
Yeah, I like to winter on the Monkey Island.
Yeah, I do not recommend that. I was just thinking about Monkey Island the other day, and I was just like, oh, that is not a place I want to visit.
So the dispersed nature of smaller tribes, right? So it's non-homogeneous. This was actively exploited in 1521 when Spanish colonists showed up because it was able to pick people off.
Yeah.
So they began scooping up groups of Native Americans and enslaving them and shipping them to Caribbean sugar plantations.
Right.
This kind of came to a head a couple decades later in 1576, where there was an actual coordinated conflict between, and I might say this wrong, feel free to email in and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, I apologize, the Escamacu tribe and the Spanish, and it was referred to as the Escamacu War.
Okay.
Like it was that big of a conflict.
Yeah.
And eventually Spanish control in the region began to wane, and then the French showed up and ran them out.
This region was basically the crossroads for the French, English, and Spanish in a lot of ways.
The next thing I have written is that the French were like, ha, oh, this is ours. and then the Spanish were like, no. And they came back. They ran the French out. But then the English came and said, oh, hello. So it's just like this revolving door attempted establishment of colonies on this island.
Yeah. Charleston actually itself was founded multiple times by different colonizing powers.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. And true to form, the Spanish showed up and got their butts kicked. So
it does seem to be a recurring theme.
It is.
So I'm laughing because we were just presenting that element of it as funny, but the sad side effect, or not side effect, this is a direct effect of this type of revolving door of conflict, is that the indigenous population and that previous broad spectrum of tribes was just whittled away and reduced to the point where, like 1751, it was kind of done.
We have talked about this in other locations and in this location, but result of that sort of arrival of a colonizing power was almost always the erosion of the native people's culture, the negation of their religious beliefs, and the inflicting of disease and poverty and starvation on them so that their cultures just literally could not survive in the presence of these colonizing powers. And that was part of the design of colonialism.
But it's all important to note here because of the trauma on the island. And we're going to get all of that. We're going to get into this. And don't worry, the pain keeps coming. So things have settled in the area. And it's pretty much like English territory.
Middle of the 18th century.
Yeah. West African slaves were brought in to the Sea Islands. And we've established this in other episodes where rice, indigo, cotton, spices were grown. And there were also, working with them, enslaved Native Americans and even indentured servants brought from Europe. So it turned back into a real melting pot of cultures. And we've talked about this in other episodes. It was isolated from the mainland, being a sea island. And this mix of cultures contributed to what we now call Gullah culture.
Yes.
So, and this is all going to be relevant to the stuff we get into in a minute.
You're never going to need to justify talking to me about cool stuff like this.
So during the Civil War, so are you ready for more conflict? So during the Civil War, Union warships showed up super early and just ran the show and occupied St. Helena Island in 1861. Like they just showed up and was like, nah, this is ours now.
All directly tied to the work of Robert Smalls.
Right, which we covered in another episode. All the slaves working on local plantations were immediately freed. And in 1862, the island established, however you want to say, built the first ever school for freed slaves in America called the Penn School.
Yeah, that one was built by Quaker missionaries, right?
Yeah. Oh, Penn. Yeah. What episode was it where we talked about how Penn is everything?
I think that was Jersey Devil, but Penn shows up a lot because Pennsylvania Dutch folks have migrated into North Carolina and South Carolina, different places, and they keep showing up in our history. And so they show up in the Little Red Man of Old Salem. They show up in the Jersey Devil. They show up in the Bottle Trees episode. They show up in all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Almost a century later, St. Helena Island became a haven for civil rights. This part of their culture persisted even after the Civil War. And during the Civil Rights Movement, Dr. Martin Luther King stayed there for a while.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah. And the Penn Center is still there today on the campus of where the Penn School stood. And it now serves to preserve and protect the island's history. And the island's renowned for its rural low country character and Gullah culture and language. So
there will be links. There will be links to the Penn Center in the show notes.
Yeah. And so all of that is sort of like the history of the island and all the things that happened on the island. There's a lot of history there. How do we tie this to the Land's End Light? So I'm going to go through a couple different theories. Ghosts. A lot of times, it's always ghosts.
There's no shortage of opportunities for there to be ghosts on this island.
Right. If we tie the idea of ghosts to either a person's unresting soul or the psychic imprint on a location caught in time due to the weight of some trauma, stories tied to tales of untimely death. Look at conflict from the colonial era all the way up through the Civil War. There is so much trauma and untimely death likely to have occurred on this island that tying the light into being a ghostly remnant from those times, you can see where some of the stories come from.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's very natural to try to draw those connections. I don't get how a ghost messes with people's cars, but that's not necessarily necessary.
There are more contemporary possibilities as well.
Okay.
In 1893, the Sea Islands hurricane brought so much death and destruction to St. Helena Island. It ranks as the 7th most destructive hurricane in United States history, on par with Katrina.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was enormous. There are estimates that as many as 2,000 people died in that hurricane.
And that would certainly cause a lot of restless souls.
Yes.
And then there's the curious case of Quigley.
Okay.
That's another, man, I feel like I want to redo the TV thing because like I should have called it the curious case of Quigley. The curious case of Quigley's Piggly Wiggly.
You could spell all three of them with Q's too. The
right.
Curious case of, yeah.
I did a little bit of digging, as I like to do. It turns out, as reported on June 16th, 1910, an Army soldier stationed at Fort Fremont, which is on the island, named Frank J. Quigley was shot and killed by a local man. So Quigley was a real dude.
And he really died there.
Yeah, he really died there. It's not good. So there are conflicting newspaper reports as to the nature of what exactly happened to cause the argument. Some say that it was a dispute over, we'll call it beverage sales.
Okay.
Some say it was the result over an argument over a pickpocketing gone wrong. So like somebody tried to pickpocket somebody else, got caught. The would-be victim stabbed that dude. And then the guy that got stabbed, he just kind of like stuck him, like didn't like stick him to kill him. Just like, hey, get off of me. Stuck him. And then this was revenge for getting stabbed because that was an inappropriate reaction to getting pickpocketed, like whatever.
That's a very detailed and complicated possible explanation. Okay.
2 newspaper accounts say that it was the result of relations between a soldier stationed on the island and somebody's wife. The thing is, every single one of these versions has it that Frank J. Quigley was not a guilty party in any of the shenanigans that led to his demise.
Oh, gosh. No way.
In all of these, he is accompanying his coworkers to confront the people that wound up doing the shooting. Again, reason for this being unknown or contested. We'll say contested.
Yeah. Also, this was being reported at a time when newspapers were going to elide a great number of potential causes and just call it a conflict, something like that, without going into detail.
So a conflict breaks out. Frank catches a hot one. He's done. Another consistent thing is that both locals and enlisted folk were all very sad about his passing. Like he was mourned on the island. Like he was known and mourned on the island.
Mm-hmm. So everybody knew he was not involved, no matter what the actual problem was.
Right. And that he was a good guy.
Yeah. Oh, it's always the nice people.
This is a pretty good cautionary tale about going with a group into a heated situation.
Yeah. Don't go decide to confront people and throw hands because you never know what's going to be waiting for you.
Oh, my friend's mad. I'm going to go back him up. No.
Nah. If you have violent acquaintances, let them sort their own problems out.
So maybe the light really is Frank J. Quigley just trying to find his way back. He did exist, and he did meet an untimely demise on the island that impacted the entire community.
Do you have any information on when the earliest sightings of the light would be?
They don't start until mid-century, so it would be after Quigley was dead.
Okay.
But it has been several generations. This isn't like a kid made it for their blog in 2007.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's wild. Because that really does leave open the possibility that, yeah, this is just directly Quigley's ghost, period. That's very not what I would have expected. I would not expect it to be so directly tied to a person.
I love this because there's a lot of possibilities. I'm like, this is good. Ball lightning, sometimes called globe lightning. I don't like this one. It's important to note that ball lightning is real. It is exceptionally rare, and it is not very well understood.
Okay. Fair enough.
Ball lightning, glowing electric orbs in the sky, have actually been recorded for centuries. They usually appear during thunderstorms as a floating sphere that can change in color and disappear within a few seconds. Sometimes, if people are close enough, they will say that they heard a hissing sound or smelled an acrid odor.
Oh, kind of like ozone or something.
Yeah, exactly. And National Geographic pins down one of the first recorded sightings of ball lightning as 1638, when a, quote, great ball of fire came through the window of an English church.
Oh, I bet that caused some alarm.
Other early accounts suggest that if you touch ball lightning, you will die.
Oh.
Because it is lightning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so much for the whole, it passes through your body and you just go, whoo.
Yeah. Some people have theorized that ball lightning is an optical illusion, but meteorologists and scientists seem to agree that ball lightning is real, even if they don't fully understand it.
I mean, sure.
I do want to note it's super rare, and Scientific American reports that only 5% on the planet will ever see it.
Actually higher than I would have guessed. But again, that causes some difficulty with the thing you pointed out of this is a regular occurrence in the same place with the same behavior every time.
So I'm going to move on. I don't buy into that.
Okay.
So I got a maybe on Quigley, a no on ball lightning. Swamp gas.
No.
I had...
Just reject it.
There was a computer game a very long time ago called Swamp Gas, and you were an alien. And
oh, really?
Yeah. The screen was a map of the United States of America, and you would move your little guy from state to state and city to city and learn little tidbits of history. That was the game.
Okay.
It was like really early digitized speech. And you would go like, Raleigh, North Carolina was founded, blah, 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 blah. Like interesting tidbits about Raleigh. Do you want to take the quiz? Yes. Like Carmen Sandiego stuff, except it was centered around an alien traveling around the country. It was a great game. So Swamp Gas, strange floating lights in the wilderness. Decaying organic matter, like rotting vegetation and animal carcasses, which are both abundant in swamps, give off gases like phosphine and methane. These are gases that have been proven to be capable of spontaneously igniting upon coming into contact with oxygen, causing very brief, low temperature flares with no physically observable catalyst. It's proven, like it exists. It happens.
But would it float down the road and through a person?
No, it's brief and has a low intensity nature to the flame. This is why swamp gas doesn't like burn up a tree or dried grasses the way normal fire would.
This is why every swamp is not on fire all the time.
Right. And this is real. They can replicate it in a lab. Swamp gas exists. This is not that. I don't know if you remember when we talked about it last time, but electric rocks, baby. You know about electric rocks? I know you do because I told you about them.
I do, but you should let everybody else in on electric rocks also.
Can you tell that this is the one that I like?
I can. You look very excited right now.
Yeah. I was able to find 2 professors, like doctors, researchers, that have attempted to assign geological explanation to essentially ghost lights. Dr. John Durr of the U.S. Geological Survey published several papers theorizing on correlations between seismic activity and atmospheric anomalies throughout the course of his career.
Okay.
And a peer of his, Dr. Michael Persinger, proposed that some of the lights that we see, what appears to be spontaneous lights, is geologic in origin, specifically, and I'm going to say this 2 different ways because I've heard it said both ways, either piezoelectrically,
Oh, okay.
generated under tectonic strain.
Yeah.
So piezoelectric or piezoelectric material, they accumulate electric charges when mechanical stress is applied to them. So a good example would be, I mean, you might have heard about those types of microphones and the way they vibrate.
Yeah.
A really practical hands-on thing that I think most people will know is those lighters that you can get at the grocery store, where it's like a long stick and a little trigger for lighting a gas fireplace or a grill or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
When you're pushing down on that button, you know how it gives resistance and then clicks? What you're actually doing is you're pushing down on a spring, and that spring is loading mechanical stress to a little metal pin. When that has enough stress, the pin breaks free and hits a little crystal.
It hits a crystal?
Yeah, like a little rock.
Yeah.
In there. And that generates a spark.
I didn't realize that was how the spark was generated.
And then it travels up the little wire and it arcs across the top where the gas is being funneled through the tube, and it lights. And that's how those work.
Wow. Okay.
That's how pressure applied to this type of material will generate voltage. Let's think about tectonic strain. We've got fault lines, rocks underground, rubbing against each other, heating up, vaporizing the water in them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes maybe along these lines, the rocks or soil contain something piezoelectric, like quartz or silicone, arsenic. They might then produce electricity that gets channeled up to the surface through the soil via a column of vaporized water from the strain, which upon entering the atmosphere would appear as lights.
Interesting.
And that would explain why the lights appear electrical in their behavior.
Okay. I'm very open to this idea. I mean, I'm normally only really into the supernatural explanations, but I'm very open to any explanation. And like I said about the brown mountain lights in that episode like 3 years ago, I'm actually pretty sure that those are probably chemical or electrical or something in origin, and we just don't understand how they're happening. And why not this?
Well, Michael, the U.S. Geological Survey states that South Carolina comes in number 16 out of all 50 states for seismic activity.
Really?
It has the highest seismic risk of any state on the eastern seaboard.
I did not know that.
Maybe it's just the physical manifestation of collective consciousness believing that they should see the spirit light. Maybe we just believe it. Maybe we just will it into existence, Michael.
Enough people looked down that road and said, gosh, this would be a good place for a spirit light. And then the next thing, there's a ghost light on Land's End.
So, in conclusion, I buy into electric rocks. I do like the ghost one. I like Quigley. So I'll rank them. Electric rocks, Quigley, the rest is trash. That's where I'm at with it.
I kind of want an Electric Rocks sticker now. But it would just be like an 80s metal band font. It would just say Electric Rocks. So anyway, no, I mean, I'm very into Electric Rocks. And I'm very into the idea that it's Quigley. I'm particularly drawn to that just because there's a real obvious historically documented event that we can point to and say it's that person's ghost. And we all know that they died earlier than they probably would have otherwise.
There's a lot of cool stuff on that island that this could have been a 3-hour episode if I had talked about all of it. It is jam-packed with history, and depending on your interpretation of the light, you could find a host of possible causes.
Mm-hmm.
Even some with connections to other legends nearby in the region. It's really cool, but it's super deep. I want to come back to this island for other stories. I didn't want it to be a megasode on the island because I think that it's worth giving those other stories more time. So I kept it really focused on the Land's End Light and specifically the top candidates. Sorry, Blackbeard, you don't make the cut.
It does not get to be Blackbeard.
No.
Blackbeard does not get to be this light.
No, not at all. But yeah, man, that's it. It's the Land's End Light. I added some stuff that wasn't in the other research. So thanks for listening. I tried to make it interesting.
Oh, yeah, no, totally. And also because it's been a little bit since we filmed those, then I'd forgotten a lot. I really enjoyed hearing it again.
Sweet. We hope you're enjoying the Arcane Carolina spooky season. We are certainly enjoying having worked to bring you all these episodes. Please check out www.arcanecarolinas.com and buy a copy of the book. That's my phone, and it just ruined this entire take.
No, it's all good. Don't worry about it.
All right, we'll leave it in. Leave it in. It's real.
And thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. For more episodes, behind the scenes information, and links to our social media, check out www.arcanecarolinas.com, where you can also buy the Arcane Carolinas book.
And if you like award-winning horror and science fiction, check out my books at michaelgwilliamsbooks.com or visit my publisher, Falstaff Books, at falstaffbooks.com. And if you have story suggestions, comments, or questions, email us at arcanecarolinas@gmail.com. And thanks for listening.